what I've talked about so far, the overview, the format. We good? All right, bismillah. So what I like to do is, there's a lot of presentation. I want to present some ideas, but I'll be having you guys just basically get into discussions and so on and so forth. I'll present a question and have you discuss, and then people in the group will answer back. I really love that idea of learning through group discussion and so on and so forth. And when I was younger, the way we were taught Islamic studies was very often just, hey, ilqa, basically present it to you, memorize what you got to memorize, see you next time. Whereas I always had an easier time learning through interaction. Like if our teacher says, hey, what do you think of this topic? Talk with your friends about it for the next few minutes. I'm processing it as we're talking. And you'll see now, even though we're learning basics, aqeedah that we pretty much all know, the way, inshallah, through the question that you're going to get today, inshallah, you'll see how we're forcing ourselves to be challenged. And maybe there's no right answer. You'll see in a minute, inshallah. So everything we're going to cover for the next 12 or so weeks, inshallah, is going to fall into one of two categories. It's either going to be something you already know, you come across this before, or it's going to be something brand new. So if it's something brand new, alhamdulillah, that's great. So it's nice, it's new, it's exciting. But if it's something you already know, you can still make it a win-win. And that is through your niyyah, right? You can seek to benefit from it with the following three intentions. Number one, you're brushing up on knowledge that you may have forgotten, or getting more knowledge on top of the foundation that you already had, strengthening your grasp of it, or at the very least, your intention of coming here every Tuesday will be to spend time with like-minded Muslims who are, keeping the faith alive and sharpening your skills and networking with other brothers and sisters while you're learning your faith in a stronger format, inshallah. So you always hear this thing about renew your niyyah, right? That's what I just mentioned now. Make sure that these three things I just said are in your intention. That way, if you're learning something new, you're learning something you've heard before, it's a win-win. And it wouldn't be fair for us to start our course without mentioning niyyah, because that's the root of all beliefs, that's the root of all action. So niyyah means intention. And as Muslims, we constantly say, renew your intention, right? Make sure your intention is sincere for Allah. What does it mean for your intention to be sincere for Allah? Yes? You're doing it for the sake of Allah and not for anybody else. What does that mean? I'm here on a Tuesday for the sake of Allah. What does that mean if you had to rephrase it? Yes? You're committing to learn more about Allah and get closer to Him. So that could be understood for a class like this. It's Aqeedah and Deen, right? And you're in the masjid. What about work? We say you can go to work and be for the sake of Allah, right? But that's like, let's say you work at a shop, or you're an engineer, or this or that. How's that becoming for the sake of Allah? That can be for the sake, and that should be for the sake of Allah too, right? That's the majority of what we do with our time. We're not always in the masjid. We're here once a week, twice a week. But the majority of what we do, we're at school, work, making money, just doing normal activities. But those should be for the sake of Allah too, right? So your answer is good for a class like this. It's very easily understood. How do we broaden it? How can my work be for the sake of Allah? How can my school be for the sake of Allah? Yes?
Ask yourself, if you'd be doing it, no one else do it.
Jazakallah. Actually, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, like if you're just walking and you see them on the floor,
Yep.
no one's watching you.
Excellent.
Little things like that, right?
So that's a trick, which I actually have written down. There's two questions you can ask yourself to verify between you and yourself. Am I really sincere for Allah? But I want to actually backtrack that. So you're saying if no one was watching, I would still do this. But there's things that you do with no one's watching, but they're not necessarily for the sake of Allah. You could be playing video games at home for 3 hours. No one's there. No one's home that day. So that didn't, in and of itself, you haven't verified just yet that's for the sake of Allah, right? But it's a good trick to, if you're doubting your intention, which we'll get to in a second. But I love that. Yes?
You're expecting reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instead of anything else. So whether that be something monetary or something non-monetary, a feeling, for example, you're expecting everything good to come out of your actions from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes, Jazakallah khair. That's ultimately, what are you seeking? And niyyah huwa al-qasd. If you open up an Arabic lexicon, the first thing you find, what is the definition of niyyah? It's al-qasd. Al-qasd meaning the desire or the goal. So what are you seeking from this action? So he says, "La nuridu minkum jaza'an wala shukura." Allah says in the Quran, those the pure, sincere Muslims, they're telling, when they give sadaqah and they help others, they say, we don't want a reward from you. We don't even need or desire thanks from you. That's a high level. Like, even if you don't thank me for the good that I did, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah. That's who I seek my reward from it. So the first question you ask yourself is, what am I seeking from this action? This is how you can really, if you're really doubting your intention, you say, what am I seeking by being here on a Tuesday night? And this is a question you can ask yourself every day, all day. When you go to work, what am I seeking from here? Well, I'm seeking to get money. Like if you go to your job, let's be frank, you're not going to the shop and to help the universe. You're going because you need a job. But still, then you dig deeper. Well, what am I going to do with that money? How am I choosing to live my life? The question you really got to ask is why. And the further you dig with why, the more you get to your root of your niyyah. And this is very important. I know this is basic stuff, but unless we know how to check our intention, we know how to basically renew it when we need to, this all might be lost. Because there's material values and immaterial ones, but dunya benefits rather, I could say, that people seek. And it falls into one of three categories. And you touched on them just now. It could be material benefit, which is wealth. Any form of wealth. I'm trying to get money from this. I'm trying to get any other type of physical benefit. The second dunya value that people may seek to attain is status. Status. And this is a common one. The Prophet ﷺ referred to as al-riya. Al-riya, seeking to be seen. And that's status comes in a million different forms. Right? It's just, I want people to look at me better because they think I'm religious or I'm knowledgeable or I'm this or I'm that or the other thing, right? Or I have a specific goal I would like to seek. And the final thing that people seek is power. So it's either wealth, status, or power. It's going to fit whatever the goal is, it's going to fit under one of these three categories or all three. And then ultimately, the one that should trump all of those is sincerity for Allah's sake, is that al-ihtisabul ajr min Allah. Saying Allah knows how we function. He created us. He knows that you seek things through the actions that you do. Right? Who lives on this earth, which sane adult human being lives on this earth and doesn't actually seek anything with the actions they do? Even if they're sitting at home playing video games, what are they seeking? Pleasure and dopamine and just basically hanging out and comfort, right? And if you ask them, hey, come help out somebody, help our friend move, or come to the masjid and volunteer, now they're going to sacrifice that comfort and that dopamine and so on in order for the greater good. So not to dwell on this too long, the first question you ask is, why am I doing this? And the second question is the one that you mentioned, which is, if the situation were difficult, in one of the forms is that if I weren't going to get any attention or praise or benefit from the dunya, would I still do it? That's when you test yourself. It's like waking up for Fajr in the morning. There's not that many people. They can't all see you. You can't make a name for yourself. So it's harder. The Prophet ﷺ said the hardest two prayers for the munafiqeen to attend are which? Al-Fajr and Isha. Because back in the day, they didn't have lights. So Fajr and Isha was just dark. So nobody sees who comes and goes. So they're like, well, if no one's seeing, I'll just stay home. So you can just assume that the next morning you can tell people, yeah, no, I was there at Aisha. And the person will assume, oh, I guess you were in another row or something like that, right? So it is, when you are in the absence of, I think I need to get a drink of water or something. Left my bottle in the car. Second. Jazakallah khair. Appreciate you, brother. All right, Jazakallah khair. So, Bismillah. In the absence of dunya incentives, and the form that our brother mentioned, what's your name? Sorry, Adam. The example that Adam mentioned is the absence of the incentive of people seeing you and so on. Will I still do this good deed? So that's a question you ask yourself. Why am I doing this? And if there was an absence of dunya incentives, would I still do it? That's how you verify, inshallah ta'ala, that you have a sincere intention for the sake of Allah. All right. So, Bismillah. We're speaking about foundations of faith, correct?
Yeah.
So, you've all heard of Arkanul Iman, the pillars of faith. Have you heard of Arkanul Islam? So, are they the same?
No.
So, how many pillars of faith? How many arkan al-iman do we have? I hear 6. Any other numbers? All right, good. How many pillars of Islam? Arkan al-Islam. I hear 5. Anybody else? All right, 6 and 5, right? So, everybody, this is our first exercise. Write down the pillars of Iman and the pillars of Islam. Go ahead. Whoever is finished, I want somebody to tell me the pillars of Iman whenever you're ready. Who's ready? Yes.
So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His messengers, His books, His angels, Day of Judgment, and then predestiny is the term we use.
Okay, great. So the belief in, the pillars of Iman, right? What is a pillar, first off? A pillar is something that you rely on for the foundation of your structure. Without the pillar, the structure collapses, right? Each pillar is essential. Bismillah. So, sorry, this sore throat is, I thought it was done. Allah Islamak, Jazakumullah khair. Bismillah. So, I think it helps because it keeps the warm air. Maybe it helps me, yeah. Maybe if you can raise the volume, I'll speak lower. Maybe that would probably be easier. Bismillah. So, a pillar is something that is essential for the structure. So, Arkan al-Iman is belief in Allah, right? The first pillar. Belief in His, and the rest are not necessarily in order. Only the first one is the one in order, the belief in Allah. The belief in His books, in His messengers, the belief in the angels, the belief in the last day, and the belief in al-qadar, khayrihi wa sharrih. Belief in predestination, predestiny, fate. All of these are translations of qada and qadar, right? Does anybody have anything else other than these? These are the pillars of our Iman, of our faith. All right, Jazakumullah khairan. What about the pillars of Islam? Yes, sister. So first off, how many are there? 5. Excellent. What are they? Sabr Hajj. Exactly, right? Anybody got anything else? Ash-Shahadatain, testimony of faith. Then prayer, fasting, zakah, and Hajj. Man istata'a ilayhi sabila. Hajj has a caveat for those who are able to perform it. Bismillah. Okay. So, right off the bat, what are you noticing about the differences between these two sections of pillars? Do you notice a difference first off? Yes.
Pillars of Iman are more like belief-based, whereas Islam is like more action.
Yes. Perfect. That's exactly what it is. أركان الإيمان كلهم في القلب وأركان الإسلام على اللسان والجوارح. The pillars of Iman are their presence أو محلها القلب. They are present in the heart, right? You can't tell by looking at somebody, do they have a belief in Allah, do they believe in angels, etc. How do you tell? They have to present it to you. And they present it to you how? Through Arkan al-Islam, the pillars of Islam, through their actions of the limbs and actions, more importantly, of the tongue, right? So, in this dunya, we can't judge whether somebody has the pillars of Iman in their heart. But the best the best that we got is what they present to us through Arkan al-Iman, Islam, the pillars of Islam. Does that make sense? The Prophet ﷺ taught us that we are antum shuhada'ullahi ala al-ard. You are the witnesses of Allah on this planet. You can only do what you can only judge based on what you see. Imagine if we just assumed, or if we had no way of knowing. You know how, like, in the modern, this is actually a problem that we run into in the modern world because we deal with so many people of different beliefs. They say, well, you can't judge anybody. A famous person dies who is not Muslim. And a lot of your Muslim friends say, well, Allah yarhamu, and they treat him basically like he's a Muslim person who has passed. And you say, well, he's not Muslim, so we will be respectful, of course. We're not going to be disrespectful to those who have passed. We're not going to speak ill of them, etc. But we're not going to treat them like a Muslim who has passed, correct? But you see a lot of the lines get blurred, and they say, well, you can't judge what's in their heart. Well, of course I'm not going to judge what's in their heart. I don't know, but they've given me signs throughout their life. Because if you said that about somebody, the opposite is also true. If your Muslim friend dies, well, we can't bury him in the Muslim graveyard because we don't know. You can't judge what's in his heart. Maybe he was secretly not Muslim. Maybe he just pretended. So only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the individual fate of every human being. But we work with what we see. That's all you got, right? And if we're wrong, we're only held accountable for acting upon the knowledge that we had in this dunya based on the way a person presented themselves. Okay, bismillah. So our third and final question for today is a very simple one. Why do you believe? Everybody here, alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, by Allah's blessing, is a Muslim believer, right? So why do you believe? So this is a question I want you to get into groups of 3 or 4, I guess 4, basically the two adjacent tables. And let's discuss for a few minutes, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, about why do you believe? Why are you a Muslim? All right, I want to hear your thoughts. Go ahead. And be as honest as possible, because I'm going to challenge your answers. Yeah, get in the groups.
So why did you choose to worship Allah without reference?
I would agree, actually. It just gives you it's also one of the things that that's just the African. I don't know what it's felt about it. The nature is something and you feel that it's wrong. So also the thing about Islam is that it is things that you're actually told that the people things that you feel like you're told, you're encouraged to do that. So it's very practical and lines up with that's something else that That comes from experience. And when you go to that point where you're never going to be there. So then you kind of
bring it down. Oh, no problem. Well, this is my favorite part. All right, we got about 30 seconds left. All right, Bismillah. Jazakumullah khairan, everybody. I hope you had some fruitful conversation. So first things first, before I get some responses, have you ever been asked this question before? If you have, raise your hand. Oh, you have in the back, sister. Yes. Have you been asked this question before? Can you share with us the context? Like, who asked you? What was the situation? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I get asked a lot in the halakas I join.
Oh, okay. So like the teacher is presenting or challenging. So, okay, great. How anybody else has been asked this question? I'm curious to see if, for example, a friend or a colleague who's not Muslim has asked you. Yes. Okay. So you've been challenged. This is a challenge, by the way. I told you I'm going to challenge your answers. So, because why do you believe? Like sometimes it's asked aggressively, correct? Come on, you're a Muslim in the 21st century. That you still believe in angels. So it's a challenge. And other times it's like a teacher. It's a rhetorical question, so you feel safe, right? Our sister in the back mentioned. Well, my teacher in the halaqah tells me. So, well, then you feel completely safe. You're not really actually challenged. So you might just give a generic answer, which I'm going to call out, by the way, right? If people give a generic answer, because you're not actually challenged. But the question is a very serious one. How many people here were born Muslim? Alhamdulillah. How many people here converted to the faith? Okay, so alhamdulillah, inshallah ta'ala, we have to make a strong effort to bring a lot more converts to our masajid and attend. But usually when I do this class, we have, it's maybe one or two, right? And that's just the way it is. The problem with that is, which actually I don't want to get there prematurely. I'll get there when in a moment, after I hear a few answers. So the question is, why do you believe? Let's hear some voices. I want to hear at least 10 answers, because this is very important. Actually, I want to be sitting to write down some of our answers, inshallah. I like to sometimes people are very creative, and it's very motivating for me. All right, why do you believe? Let's hear it. Who's first? Yes.
So, I mean, I've never been asked that question before, so it was kind of difficult to answer because alhamdulillah, I was born a Muslim, and something like, I guess it'd be more difficult for like a convert, because he's dwelled on that question a lot to the point where it's made him convert from any religion.
They're gonna have a real answer, a solid answer. Yep.
So, I mean, we kind of dwelled on what we do from what our parents tell us. It's like a way of life. We kind of see like how people, like if they drink or if they do anything like that, it kind of hurts them. Like gambling is a very big problem to the point where there's like people help you saying like, if you gamble, like you have an addiction to gambling, please call this number. And how in Islam we learned like that's haram. We learned drinking is haram. We learned all that stuff is haram. It's like a way of life to help kind of preserve someone's mind, body, and just keep out of the temple. And also help them guide them spiritually to alhamdulillah the end.
So is this your personal reason for why you believe?
Group reason. We kind of all came up with this. I like.
Okay, so great, because I did ask you guys to ask in the group. But I want you to, I want you guys to reach inside and basically answering the question: why am I here on a Tuesday night learning about Islam? You could be doing anything else. You could be sleeping or getting ready for work or school, etc. You could be just hanging out, relaxing, but you're here. So there's got to be something driving that. It's got to be something motivating you to put Islam on a high position in your life. So you shared. That's great. I like the answer. I want to challenge that because you mentioned, for example, basically summarized, Islam gives you a way of life that preserves your dignified existence through life. You mentioned drinking and gambling and the harms they can cause on a societal level, on a family level, on an individual level. So you're like, well, so my challenge is that, well, there's other lifestyles that protect from those harms as well. Like there's other faiths, there's other just straight up lifestyles. Like some people, they choose not to drink, they choose not to gamble. So what makes your path unique? Why you're different than theirs or better?
Mostly fear for like maybe if I do this, maybe I'll be judged pretty harsh during the day of judgment. And it's like I don't want to, add up more sins. I know like I'm not perfect, and I'm so I don't think this is perfect. I don't want to just add more and more and make it. Like,
so
a bad
fear.
habit.
When I ask you why do you believe, your response is, well, fear. Fear is my motivator. Is that your response?
Fear and just overall, I'd say the reason I believe is just because I know it's right. This is the first time I've actually thought about the question.
I'm glad you say that. Thank you so much for being honest. So when you say I know it's right, I'm gonna move on just because I don't want to attack you the whole time. But like I know a majority of us, because we were born Muslim, if not all of us, I know it's right. How many of us resonate with that thought process? I know it's right. That's why I chose. Because I'm going to ask you next, why Islam? Not why do you believe in general in something? Because most people choose to believe in something. But you chose Islam. Or did you choose it? That's the next question. Thank you so much. What's your name? Sorry, I'll get used to that inshallah over time. So Mustafa and Adam, right? I got that table. That's good. All right, I see another hand. Yes, brother. Why do you believe?
Okay, so after looking at like every other religion, none of it makes sense. Like,
So if you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
20.
21, mashallah. Have you looked in depth into the other Buddhism, for example, the dominant faiths in the world?
Yes.
Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism, Hinduism,
Yes, it is.
and atheism is growing. Okay, so if I ask you why do you believe specifically in Islam, your response is?
Okay, so basically, before I was born a Muslim, of course, and I've been taught like enough to like know my religion. So I told myself, okay, how about I just look into other religions and see if any of it makes sense with like logic, proof, everything.
Yeah.
So after I looked into Christianity, because it's the like main religion right now, it has like the most followers. It didn't make any sense because of the Trinity, the Father, the God, the Holy Spirit, all that made no sense to me. And the fact that Jesus died for our sins and all that made no sense.
Okay. So mashallah, so you actually went on a journey and you challenged yourself at some point and said, well, I challenge the fact that I was born into a Muslim family. That shouldn't be enough for somebody to guarantee that they're on the truth. By the way, that thought process we've been taught very often is a dangerous thought process. It is. So it's not wrong. Your parents might tell you, or elders might tell you, leave that, don't open that door because it could lead you off the path. And that's true. But we live in an age, we're in a controlled environment here, right? We're in a safe space. We can discuss, we can challenge and break down our barriers without the fear of being dragged left and right. This is the perfect place to challenge our thoughts in the masjid, where we have other people that will challenge us, but at the same time, we have an answer for our problems. So yes, when people tell you, be careful this path, it is because maybe you're 21, maybe you're 16, maybe you're 17, you're not ready for the challenges that come across. You don't have someone to go to say, well, help me undo this knot that just got tied, right? So in an environment like this, it's the best case scenario. Thank you so much. Jazakallah khair. Let me move on the side and I'll come back this way. Sisters, why do you believe? Come on, we have to hear some voices. This class is a very big on participation. So why do you believe? This is a challenge. When I asked you guys who has been asked this question before, I only got one hand. That means 99% of us never got this question before. You've never been challenged. Why Islam? Why do you believe? So this is important. Yes, sister.
So we actually spoke to some some of our friends about it who are Christians, and they don't seem like steadfast on their religion. And like a lot of the things that they're teaching and like about the whole like God, Son, and Holy Spirit, like that doesn't make sense if you pick one God. So, yeah.
So I'm seeing a theme here, which is where you're comparing it to the next most dominant faith in the world, which is Christianity. So obviously, so what if someone tells you, okay, Christianity doesn't make sense, but that doesn't automatically mean Islam makes sense because there's other options out there, right? So you're saying, well, that the other most dominant faith in the world doesn't make sense, therefore Islam is correct. But that's a logical fallacy, correct? They could both be wrong. It's like saying, well, this building is not, the building next door is not stable, therefore mine is stable. No, they could both be unstable. So that's enough to say why not Christianity, but it's not enough to say why Islam. Your answer got a lot closer to why Islam. You said, well, one of these has to be true. And I went through most of the most common ones and they weren't making sense. So I like your answer.
To add on, so when I after looking at Islam and everything, after reading the Quran, everything that's been said in the Quran, it makes sense and it has proven by science.
So I like where we're going here. We're verifying or we're challenging our own, or now besides invalidating the external problems or external beliefs, now I'm gonna go ahead and validate mine, because both of those are required to build your foundation. Now I've invalidated what's out there. I'm like, they don't seem like they're stable. They don't make sense. But that doesn't guarantee that mine makes sense. Now I go revisit mine with a changed eye. And then now what do you develop here? What are you building? Is that next time someone challenges you, next time someone shares a link or it comes up in your feed, like a lot of these tactics, these sly tactics that people do online. So a lot of these Islamophobes, when your YouTube feed is about Islamic videos and so on, they basically play with the algorithm to make sure that their videos show up in your feed as well. So then if you're a young man, young woman who's not really that educated Islamically, they're like, well, maybe I'll click this, and then they get fooled, and they get by these conniving people. So when you're building your foundation, you're better equipped for these challenges. When they attack you, you're like, whoa, I already dealt with this. I already built my foundation. This is not going to shake me, right? I remember one time we were at the masjid. I was a lot younger, and one guy came outside. He was like Christian guy handing out pamphlets and trying to convert people outside the masjid in New York. And I remember passing by, and I was just like, oh, what's this guy got to say? I felt, even though I had no knowledge Islamically, I felt like, well, there's nothing he could say that would convince me. So he came, and on his pamphlet it said, when you guys are familiar with the surah Abasa wa Tawalla, the Prophet ﷺ, the blind Sahabi Ibn Maktoum radiallahu anh, came to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet got annoyed with him and turned away. He looked away from him, and then Allah reprimanded him in the form of a surah. So this man, or the pamphlet that he had, said, when the blind man came to Jesus, what did he do? He cured his blindness, and in the Quran, by the will of Allah. He said, so when the blind man came to Jesus, he cured his blindness. When the blind man came to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he turned away. So he said, who would you rather worship? That's what it said in the pamphlet. And I remember there was a brother there who was very angry and saying Muhammad's better than Jesus and this and that. And I was like, wait a second. There's a fallacy here. I'd rather worship none of them, neither of them. Are you saying because he was able to, by Allah's permission, cure a blind man, and the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ made one mistake, I'd rather worship him, he's a better person to worship? Wait, I don't worship either of them. So they set you up, they set up the premise. And if you don't have a foundation, you're like, well, I don't even know where to start. You start fighting with him about a side issue, and maybe your faith is weakened, and so on and so forth, right? So that's the goal here that we're doing, is we invalidate the external pressures, but we're also validating or cross-verifying our own. That's the strongest possible foundation you can do. Anybody here in engineering or even in IT and stuff like that? How many redundancies and stress tests and that kind of stuff do you do? Even though the math checks out, right? On paper, in theory, this checks out, but you still test it. You stress test it. So when you go out into the real world, yeah, we've already verified that this is going to hold, that this building is standing straight. That's the goal of our foundations class today. Let's hear 3 more voices, inshallah, and then we'll try to wrap up. If you guys don't mind, I want to get to the people who have not spoken yet. Yes, brother.
One of the discussion points that we had
Yeah.
was
it lines up with the fitra, like the natural,
Yep.
you know, what we internally think is right versus wrong, it lines up with it.
Yeah.
And then as we were talking right now, it also, as the Quran encourages reflection and it challenges intellect through scientific facts.
Okay.
That day by day we're exploring things, and day by day we're validating
Yes.
ayat in the Quran that maybe we believed in them, but we didn't really understand them.
Yeah.
But as we're progressing scientifically, we're validating Quranic facts.
It strengthens our faith. ليطمئن قلبي. لكن ليطمئن قلبي, like Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam said to the Prophet to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah said, أولم تؤمن? He said, don't you believe? He said, yes. لكن ليطمئن قلبي, like my heart will be at ease and rest. The more it gets validated, the more certain I am, and my heart will be at that much more rest and will withstand that much more. So that's what we're following in the footsteps of our Prophet Ibrahim. The fitrah, that's one of the reasons why you should believe. Because living in this 21st century right now, 2022, right? We are surrounded by an ever-changing world, and every time they switch the goalposts, they present us that this is the reality, this is how it's always been, right? We're talking about different challenges in the modern world, LGBT, different pronouns and gender identities, and they say, from here on out, anybody who's been against this in the past is wrong, right? And they say, well, this is how it's always been. You're like, wait, no, that's not how it's always been. I was around 10 years ago. And if you don't accept this new reality as the always reality, then we're going to cancel you. We're going to make sure you lose your job. We're going to make sure you can't function. Yes or no? You guys are familiar with these challenges. So it's like, wait a second. Things are changing, and I find within myself a fitrah, a natural disposition is one of the translations. I find a natural unease towards some of these changes. I find a natural recognition of certain patterns in social behavior, right? There's some things, naturally you're inclined to do it, or naturally you're inclined to accept it. And other people, by the way, this is like across the board, where people are like, well, yeah, I have a natural inclination to certain behaviors. For example, respecting elders. For example, something as basic as not murdering or harming others, not stealing from others. You don't have to justify, you don't have to explain to somebody why stealing is wrong. You don't have to explain to somebody why murder is wrong. You don't have to, well, you think you don't have to explain to somebody why respecting elders is important, respecting one's parents, etc., etc. Those main stuff, there's no need for discussion, at least for now. But the more you branch out is where in our society today, more things are up for discussion that were never up for discussion historically. Social behaviors, certain deviances, LGBT, and certain identities and so on and so forth. That's where it's becoming most apparent. So I mentioned this why? Because it's okay to understand that the Creator, who has created our natural disposition, will obviously send down a guidebook that goes in line and hand in hand with it. Obviously, the one who creates, the one who makes the manual for the item, it's going to match with the item, with what the item was meant to work with. And it's okay for you to say, well, I have a red flag in my heart and my soul for certain patterns that society is trying to thrust on me. Now, can you trust your own individual fitrah? That's it, as your gut feeling, and I'm not going to research or verify? No. But it's valuable as a starting point, and it's valuable as an intuition, and it's valuable. Like we're taught now in our day and age to throw it out the window and just accept society as it is now, ever-changing society, and just accept that this is how it is. Well, what happens next year? What happens in 10 years? They're going to change again. They always present the current value system as the value system. This is as good as it's going to get, and this is true and false. 10 years from now, no, this is the true and false. And if you believe last decade's true and false, we're going to cancel you and get you fired and so on and so forth. Wait a second, but that was the true and false that you pressured me to accept. And then 10 years from then, new true and false. So wait, how far is this going to go? And the answer is forever. It will constantly be evolving. And you have to have a root true and false that at the very least you can rely on, as Prophet Lut alayhi salam mentioned. When he said that, the ayah escapes me at the moment, but he was saying basically along the lines of, I wish I had something solid to lean on. In the sense of, he was talking about a different concept, but metaphorically is in our day and age, You want something solid to lean on because you're like, wait a second, how often are these values going to change? And now you have kids in the world, inshallah, one day, and you're like, well, now what? Like, what pressures? Who decides what's right and wrong? Fitra plays a role in that. All right, let's hear two more voices, inshallah. Why do you believe? Yes, sister. Dua. Can you expand on that a bit? So when I ask, why do you believe? Why are you a Muslim? Your response is, what is it about dua that makes you Muslim? Or strengthens your Iman?
I feel like he hears me.
Okay,
I also hear him.
great. So your du'as have been answered before, they have given you comfort, they have, okay, alhamdulillah. So you have a personal experience that has strengthened your Iman, it keeps you a Muslim. Alhamdulillah, may Allah bless you and make you from those whose du'as are always accepted. Ameen. What about, so this is a personal experience, but the only problem with that is that it's very hard to impart it on others, correct? Sister? A personal experience is very hard to convince others. So, no, but don't worry, you answered the question right, because I asked you why do you believe? What's your personal experience? So it's fine, saying, well, this is what's keeping me grounded, this is what's keeping me Muslim. But now, inshallah, you'll be a mother, and one day, inshallah, and you have kids, and you have to pass that on to them. Or you get challenged in school or college or work, and they say, well, I mean, you're just saying that. Everyone says that kind of stuff, you know. Some person, does yoga and says, well, I had a spiritual experience. And you're like, well, what does that even mean? Like, it just, the lines get blurred. So I love the answer, by the way, because personal experience is one of the ways through your Iman is validated. Nobody could take that away from you or change that for you. What else we got? Why do you believe? Yes.
Also to add on to like the point of like looking at other options. Let's say like you go one step further and you're looking at atheism or like being agnostic.
Mm-hmm.
Like at that point, it's like let's say you're like, okay, I don't believe in Christianity, Judaism, anything. Like it's just I'm just here.
Okay.
The problem with that, like the point, which is a great point, it's like let's say from an atheistic perspective, you can't really. There's no moral. The problem of morality becomes a huge issue because how do you explain fitra? Because if you're looking at it like, let's say atheism, the only morality you have is really self-interest. If you're just looking at it, I'm just here, I spawned as a creature, and I'm just living, I want to feel as happy as I can, or the most pleasure, and the least amount of pain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one way, but it's usually like just deep down, you might not be able to explain it normally, but like we have the point of fitra, that like something's wrong, like or right or wrong, just by like you have a gut feeling about it. With atheism, you can't it's kind of hard to explain it. And also, if you want to look at it like, let's say, like agnosticism, like let's say we narrowed it down. Let's say we look at religions, right?
Yeah.
Christianity, Judaism, all the major ones, and we're like, okay, so that makes the most sense. Let's say you're not like you're agnostic.
Yeah.
It's like. Just from a mental standpoint, it's kind of better even as yourself. Like, just you have something to look forward to, if that makes sense. Like, you don't feel as vulnerable.
Well, yeah, we're going to get there, inshallah, talking about like what does Islam have to offer in terms of, well, I mean, if we were to summarize it, the concept of atheism or not necessarily believing in any system or structure, it carries a lot of flaws. But if I were to summarize it in one sentence, I would say that those who are atheists, they present themselves as, well, we're the rational ones, but they're taking it, and you guys are all taking it on faith. You Muslims, you're just assuming based on faith. You Christians are assuming based on faith, etc., etc. Well, they're making assumptions based on faith as well. They're going against their fitrah plenty of times in order to stay in line with their belief system. So, for example, a person who's atheist might feel uneasy about some of the social patterns that have emerged recently. And I gave the example LGBT, etc. But they'll say, well, based on my belief system of nothing matters and we're all just disappearing anyway and let people enjoy, I'm going to override my unease and let people do that. So they attack you for overriding your desires to fulfill your belief system. They're doing the exact same thing. They're taking it on faith that nothing occurs after death. While the majority, Muslims, for example, Christians, the majority of people on the planet today, if you do the math, they believe in an afterlife. They believe in accountability. You have 2-point-something billion Christians, you have 2 billion Muslims, you have X number of Hindus and so on. Each of these believers, each of these people, that's the majority of mankind. They believe in some accountability, they believe in a higher power, they believe in afterlife. So atheist presents themselves as the strong, especially in our tri-state area here, where the liberal coastal cities. It gets presented as, well, this is the fact, and you guys are left behind. It's like, wait, no. You guys are the ones who have to. You're the ones climbing up the hill to convince everyone else. They put you in the weak spot. They convince you you're in the weak spot, so you're defensive. And you're like, well, I have to seek approval from you guys. It's not. It's the opposite. So you got to get yourself in that mental space where it's more healthy. Jazakumullah khair. Let's hear one more voice from the sisters. Oh,
I thought you were going to the sisters. That's why.
oh, Jazakumullah khair. We'll hear and we'll go.
It gives you strength.
So I love that answer, and I'm grateful that you said it. But I hope you don't mind. I'm going to challenge it.
Yes. Go ahead.
A lot of things give people strength. They'll say, well, okay, why Islam? The Buddhist says.
I'm not talking strength as if you go into the gym. Of course not. Like if you're sick, then you know that this is from Allah to test you.
Okay.
It keeps you going. Let's say if you have a test tomorrow, you make dua, and you know that you're sincere, and Allah will reward you if you're sincere. It gives you strength always to keep going because you know there is a reward always. If it's not on earth, you know there is reward inshallah. And after.
Well,
So
that
it keeps you going. It's like a booster.
well, that's great. No, and I feel that too as well. And many believers, but other believers of other faiths will say, well, I get strength too from my belief system as well. So why did you single out Islam? Why is Islam the preferred option to get strength instead of Christianity, Buddhism, etc.?
Well, if you look at other, well, in general, all faith gives you, because Hamad Salihiyya kind of and they were fighting for so many years because they have faith.
They derive the strength or the motivation from their faith.
No, exactly.
So why is Islam the better option? How can you convince somebody? Why did you settle on Islam?
It makes you feel, if you look at it, if you study it like we are doing now, you see that it is the truth. It is the truth light. If you look at the other beliefs, there's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of contradiction. Just don't.
Excellent. So that's exactly where I wanted to land. So the thing is, like, a lot of our answers are fine. They're a good answer, but they can still be challenged. So inshallah, because the time is run out, inshallah, next week we're going to hit the ground running with why. I'm going to give you two answers. And no, I'm going to get back to our sister. I'm not going to forget, inshallah. I'm going to give you two answers, and I want us to write them down. And this is going to be a solid answer. If somebody tells you why Islam, why not Christianity, why not just do yoga in the morning and not have a belief at all, why not this, why not that, I'm going to give you an answer, inshallah, next week. Excuse me. That will be sufficient, and it will actually suffice you for yourself, and it will suffice as an answer to a challenge, inshallah. Sister, yes, why do you believe?
You asked why Islam I
Yes.
think that Islam has an answer for everything. Like, no matter how much research you do or anything you look into, there's always an answer for any question you might have, even if it comes from someone else. And to prove that, science literally proved Islam, and it was scientifically proven. Well, Islam proved the science of pregnancy, right? Like from the first step all the way until the child was out. And we have a purpose for living. Some people don't even know why they're alive or why they do the things that they do, and they don't even know why they were here. And some people believe in the Big Bang Theory and don't have an actual explanation for why we were created, or just that we were created out of thin air. But there was an actual reason that we were created, and there's always an answer for everything, even if it's put in an indirect manner.
All right, great. Jazakumullah khair. No, that's solid. I'm actually writing down our answers here. We mentioned fitra, purpose, dua, or personal experience. Islam is in line with science. Islam gives us internal strength. Islam gives us motivation. Islam gives us purpose. Other faiths, when scrutinized, don't make sense. These are all answers that you guys have given, and I've written them down because it's very important to see what's giving other people strength. Well, maybe I have missed out on. Why is Islam resonating with others as well? So inshallah, next week, we'll begin right away with two solid universal answers. So the difference between a lot of the answers we gave today, by the way, there was no wrong answer. These are great answers. These are things that I also, every single thing you guys said, I resonate with as well. But I want to be able to be sitting here and an atheist tells me, well, why Islam? I'll tell you why Abderahman Islam is because you were born into a Muslim household. Let's be frank. And do I have an answer to that? He's like, if you were born Buddhist, you'd give me all the same answers about Buddhism. You'd say, well, it's strong, it gives me motivation, it gives me purpose, it gives me this, it gives me that, right? Yes or no? And many of us would sit and be very uncomfortable, like, well, what if I was born into a Buddhist family? You know, we're 100% here, none of us are converts. So none of us had to go through the journey of saying, well, let me see, is Islam correct or not? So the building has never been shaken to see if it's going to stand, for the most part. So inshallah ta'ala, next week we can give a universal answer and we'll break it down. It's two answers basically, and they're very solid. And then we'll challenge it, we'll stress test it and see, does it hold water? Bi'idhnillah. Does anybody have any questions? Any comments? Last words?
Is it possible if you can give out your email just in case
Yeah.
anybody wants to
Absolutely.
private,
Sure, yeah, let me write it down, inshallah. So this is my email. I don't know how you guys would like to do this. If you'd like to make a WhatsApp group for the class and I can join, inshallah, that way we can have direct access, or in my email. Email is a bit slower, but I can also, we can use it, inshallah. So whatever you guys like, inshallah, let me know. And sorry.
if you can spell it out, maybe not everybody can see it.
Okay, so it's my A and then dot Badawi at massnewyork.org. It's a bit of a mouthful. Mass New York. Yeah, this one's too light. Yeah, I can see in the board. Okay. I didn't want to do purple like these, but it'll work out, inshallah. Okay. Okay, great. That's the strongest one, I think. Here. Massnewyork.org, yes. I don't know if this is visible on the camera. Is it?
Yeah, this one was.
Okay.
This one.
Okay.
Want to spell it out?
So it's A.Badaway at massnewyork.org. This goes straight to my phone, inshallah, so I'll try my best to answer quicker. If you would like to set up a WhatsApp group or something, Ahmed or anybody, I'll be glad to join. That way we can have direct updates and so on. You can let me know, inshallah, if any of the...
Your phone number.
Sure. Yes.
Can you do the group chat?
So 516 900 3034. So inshallah, feel free to send me any questions. It goes straight to my phone.
That's also his phone number.
Yeah.
Inshallah, we will set up a WhatsApp group.
Yes. Allah Jazakum Khair. So also, if there's any upcoming Tuesday that doesn't work for you guys, we can let me know in advance. Inshallah, we'll make it work. We can switch it to another day, or we can do that week afterwards. Just knowing that Ramadan is going to come up, we're planning to end like right before Ramadan, inshallah. So we definitely have to make sure to make it work. So keep in mind, that's about it. Actually, we're taking notes, alhamdulillah. And my goal is at the end to have like a sort of quiz thing. But I will be sharing some notes at the end. So it will be a very condensed version. So you should still be taking notes during the course, because it's just basically the outline, so you can just have it all together. But the things that are important to you, the things that you've learned from others and stuff, that's what you should be writing, inshallah. All right? Jazakumullah khairan. Any questions? All right, I'll see you next Tuesday, bi'idhnillah. Jazakumullah khairan, everybody.